Good afternoon, everyone. I, on behalf of PhD Chamber and my very own, welcome you all to this wonderful session on MDR 17, Regulation of Medical Devices with theme, Relevance of Voluntary Certifications in Medical Devices Sector. To take this session forward, I request Colonel Rajiv Bhargava to kindly moderate the session. I would like to briefly introduce Colonel Bhargava. Colonel Rajiv Bhargava is Associate Director at Munjal Institute for Global Manufacturing, Indian School of Business, Mohali. He has demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. He is skilled in operations management, risk management, business development, organizational development, and cross-functional team leadership. He has varied interests to include mentoring startups and design thinking. He has authored a book and several articles in leading newspapers. He is a business development professional with an MBA from ISB, focused on strategy and finance. Over to you, sir. Hello.
Yeah, thank you. So, a very good afternoon to everyone. And I must say that the PhD Chambers is touching upon a very, very important issue that is of medical devices. And this is the second in the series of the seminars that is being held. The first one being on MDR 17, the basic idea of things. And now taking it further as to how the devices can be regulated and how one can make a difference. So I do want to bring out one thing, that medical products are quite different from other consumer goods or products. They play quite an important role and are an integral part of healthcare delivery. Therefore, obviously, it is important to understand from a government's perspective that it is not only accessibility, but also safety and efficacy of medical products that really counts. Besides these considerations, there are other challenges which have to be taken into account, like national health plans, existing laws, available resources, and production and important practices. So regulatory requirements actually vary across the world. And today we are going to discuss it threadbare with a galaxy of stars that are with us. So what I am trying to bring out is that today we are going to cover role of voluntary certifications in medical devices sector, the ISO 13485 medical devices standard certification and implementation, the risk of unauthentic certification in manufacturing, and Indian certification for medical devices ICMED scheme. So as would be quite evident, the objective of our session today is to apprise the stakeholders. By that I mean the manufacturers, the traders, distributors, importers, clinical establishments, healthcare professionals, and other general public on the aspect of what are the nationally recognized medical devices standards and other regulatory requirements. A very important aspect, because frankly, the medical devices market is going to increase by a 37% CAGR to reach approximately US $50 billion by 2025. It has been termed as a sunshine sector for us, for India. So there can be nothing more important than that. And keeping that in mind, a very timely panel discussion, and I am confident that all the attendees are going to go away much more learned and after having derived some value from this. So I will request now Mr. M.S. Vich, the chair, Chandigarh chapter of PhD CCI, to give his welcome address.
Good afternoon, everybody. My chair, I'm sorry he is not available today. So on his behalf, I'm the co-chair of the Chandigarh chapter, and I would like to extend a warm and cordial welcome to you all. Friends, the medical devices sector in India comprises of large multinationals and small and mid-sized companies. Like Colonel Bhargava just told us that the sector has been recognized as the sunrise sector by the government of India. And we can all see that by the participation we've already achieved. And this is, like you also mentioned, this is our second webinar in the shortest of times. And we've had fantastic response to it. So it just shows the government of India has got the right sector. Safety risks, effectiveness, and performance of the medical devices need to be well established and regulated properly. Manufacturers and importers will have to mandatorily register their medical devices and equipment in order to be able to manufacture in India or import medical devices into India. The government of India has given time to the medical device industry to register by the 30th of June 2022. Voluntary certifications help to ensure the quality and safety of medical devices. Through this platform, we aim to apprise representatives from healthcare sector and concerned stakeholders on the role of voluntary certifications in medical devices sector, ISO 13485 medical devices standard certification and implementation, risk of unauthentic certification in manufacturing, Indian certification for medical devices scheme, and challenges faced by the medical devices manufacturers. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our esteemed guests and other high-level participants who have joined us today. First of all, I now see on our screen our regional convener of healthcare, PhD CCI, Professor Anil Kumar Gupta ji. Welcome, sir. Other esteemed guests, Mr. Anil Johri, former CEO, NABCB, New Delhi. Mr. T. Karthi, Lead Consultant, Nucleus Consultants, Chennai. Mr. Mrityunjay Jena, Scientist and Head Accreditation and Training, Andhra MedTech Zone Limited, Visakhapatnam. Mr. Manish Pandey, Director and Head PAD Division at Quality Council of India, New Delhi. Mr. Umesh Sharma, Head Regulatory, Merrill Life Sciences Private Limited. Mr. Bansi Mahajan, Member Managing Committee, IMDIM Association, Mumbai. Mr. Mayank Seni, Manager Regulatory Affairs, Samsung India Electronics Private Limited, New Delhi. And of course, Colonel Rajiv Bhargava, Associate Director, ISB. I welcome all my colleagues from the PhD Chamber and of course, representatives from the industry. As you are all aware, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry has been working as a catalyst for the promotion of Indian industry, trade and entrepreneurship since 1905. It is a forward-looking, proactive and dynamic pan-India apex organization. As a partner in progress with industry and government, PhD Chamber with a special focus on MSMEs works at the grassroots level with strong national and international linkages for propelling progress, harmony and integrated development of the Indian economy. I would like to thank all the attendees for their participation in our sessions, and I'm confident that you will all benefit greatly from this knowledge session. Now, I would like to request Colonel Bhargava to moderate and move the session forward. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for your bringing out how the PhD chambers, amongst others, how they are taking it forward, and a brief history of how things are working out. And now I will request Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, Regional Convener, Healthcare Committee of PhD CCI, to address the complete gathering.
Thank you very much, everybody. Esteemed speakers and the delegates. I'm very happy to share that the PhD Chamber of Commerce is taking initiative in coming out with discussion on very burning topics which are of great interest for the patients as well as the industry. This is the second in the series of the medical devices. The first was very successful and the second is even more successful. I don't have to say again and again, but the fact remains, medical devices, when the medical devices are certified, everybody is a gainer. The patient is the first one to gain because it generates the capacity. A certification leads to validation of knowledge pertaining to that product. It increases the earning for the industry. It increases the reputation of the doctors as well as the manufacturers, and it increases the confidence of the patient. My dear friends, certification increases the credibility and everybody is the winner. And in continuation to that, the government of India has taken an initiative that the Atmanirbhar India, so that the more and more medical products which meets the certification are produced in India and are consumed in India. So far, only 25% of the demand in India is met by the local manufacturers, and 70% to 75% is imported. The objective is not only we meet 100% of our Indian demand, we also export it. And in continuation to the same, the government of India has come up with specific programs wherein the medical devices are manufactured, and a medical device which is certified, as I said, generates immense benefit for everyone. It is a win-win situation. Presently, people, what they do, they buy the product which is not certified and easy, wealthy, and the cheaper. Certification will ensure that a product meets the standards, benefits the patients, and hence the certification is very, very important. There are norms. The government's organization, the wings of the DGHS has taken a lot of initiative. All organizations are taking initiatives. Government has come up with a product linked incentive for the manufacture of the medical devices. I must say that only recently the government of India has said that 4 medical devices parks will be developed. The Himachal is one of those countries. Tamil Nadu is another. Madhya Pradesh is another. In Himachal, I was told that there is possibility of infusion of 5,000 crore for the medical devices in the park, and it will generate 10,000 employment. So, my dear friends, it's a win-win situation. Certification is very, very essential, and it's a matter of pride for all of us and in the PhD Chamber of Commerce that we have taken up a very burning topic, bringing all the facts to our respected delegates. And with this, the future for the medical devices is very bright, and the certification will bring lot of credibility, lot of export, and lot of confidence by the doctors in India. I have worked in PGI. The PGI doctors are always been insisting with the imported products. Why? Because that has certifications and that generates confidence. We have tried our level best and we have succeeded partially. Once a product is certified, Indian doctors are very willing to take it, and there is a lot of potential for this industry, and the PhD Chamber of Commerce has taken great initiative. I think everybody will be a winner if we pick it up, and let's see that this sunrise industry rises and we continue talking on this subject. Thank you very much. Over to Colonel Rajiv, please.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Gupta. A real compliment to you that such a vast topic, you have brought out the essentials in precisely 5 minutes. That is really awesome. And see, brevity, the more brevity is there, the more difficult it is, but you have done it. And you spoke about how certification of medical devices is everybody's gain, especially earning, reputation, confidence, and credibility. Yet, people do not go in for such certification. So there must be some very, very important reasons why the people don't go. And we have a galaxy of speakers, as I said earlier, who are going to talk to us as to why. I mean, everyone knows the advantages, but why people do not go in for certification. So and the very first person whom I have is Mr. Anil Johri. He is the former CEO of NABCB, and he has more than 41 years of experience in standards, conformity assessment, and accreditation in India's apex quality organizations. That is the Bureau of Indian Standards, Export Inspection Council, and the Quality Council of India. He is also retired as the CEO of National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies, a constituent board of QCI in July 2019. He has also worked extensively in the medical devices space in setting up accreditation of notified bodies under MDR 2017 and certification bodies for ISO 13485, as well as leading development of voluntary Icmed scheme of QCI. So he is going to talk about the role of voluntary certifications in medical devices sector, a very important aspect. So please listen carefully. Over to you, sir. You are muted.
Yeah, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, PhD Chamber of Commerce, for inviting me to make a presentation during this series of webinars that you're organizing. I'm glad to support you and be here. Incidentally, I'm a product of Chandigarh, Punjab Engineering College. So there is a connection to Chandigarh as well. I've lived in Jalandhar and Kurukshetra, so there's a huge connection with this region, although last 32 years I am in Delhi. And I'm going to speak on the relevance of voluntary certification in medical device sector, because one obvious question would be, if medical devices are going to be regulated by MDR, why do we need certification, a voluntary certification? So I'm going to attempt to answer that question for you and clear some of the confusion that industry has. Let me share my screen. Can you see the screen now?
Not as yet. Yeah, now we can see.
Okay. Let's look at the global scene. Global scene in industrial goods and engineering goods is governed by something called Agreement on Technical Barriers to Trade, TBT agreement in short, and it has given some grounds for regulation, which is health, safety, environment, deceptive trade practice, or national security. So as you can see, medical devices are liable to be regulated because health and safety implications are there for medical devices. In India, we know that they are not fully regulated. Your last session was on MDR and on medical device regulation. You know we are in transition. But in most countries, especially in developed countries, medical devices are regulated. WTO TBT agreement also encourages members to adopt international standards when they fix their regulations. And most developed countries have adopted international standards. And in the space of medical devices, ISO, which is International Organization for Standardization, or IEC, which is the International Electrotechnical Commission, which is more on electrical, electronics, IT standards. And many medical devices have electrical or electronic background. So ISO, IEC standards are considered international standards as far as medical devices are concerned. TBT agreement defines technical regulation. I thought it would be good to share with you the definition, because one significant change took place when TBT agreement came in 1st January 1995. That is, Earlier, we used to use the terms mandatory standards and voluntary standards. TBT agreement changed the definition. Now we use the terms technical regulation for mandatory standards. We use the term technical regulation. That's defined in the agreement. And standards today means voluntary standards. So when you go outside and you talk standards, people think you are talking voluntary standards, whereas most of us are talking regulations when we are saying standards. So that confusion comes up many times in the foreign when you go abroad. So one has to be clear that technically today, technical regulations are what were earlier mandatory standards. And as you can see, the definition is there, which says that it's a document which lays down product characteristics or their related processes. So when we say product characteristics, it means product requirements. Related processes, so we have GMPs, we have MDQMS, we have HACCP in food sector. Those are related processes with which compliance is mandatory. So technical regulations means mandatory standards today. So please remember that. Or in simple terms, technical regulation means I'm using in inverted commas, standards enforced by law or laid down by law, that you have to follow certain standards. Technical regulations also contain what is called a conformity assessment procedure, means the manner of demonstrating compliance. How will you demonstrate compliance to the requirements of the product? Will it be testing? Will it be inspection of the factory? Will it be some other method, even self-declaration in low-risk products in Europe? So that is called, technically called conformity assessment procedure. This is important because many times you may meet international standards, but if you don't meet the procedure in the right manner, you may still not be accepted in the foreign market. So the question, as I said, why voluntary certification in regulated sector? I mean, if it's regulated, that's it. Its standards have been enforced by law, that should be the end of it. But actually worldwide it isn't. And it's good to look at, I mean, you people, most of you are from medical device sector. So it's good to look at what is happening in other sectors so that there is some learning from there. Now, based on the grounds that I indicated, a number of sectors are under regulation. Food is under regulation, you know that. Drugs are under regulation, you know that. Electrical appliances are under regulation, you know that. Toys have recently been placed under regulation. Chemicals still not regulated in India, but worldwide they are regulated in the most developed economies. Machinery safety is still not regulated in India, but worldwide, in developed economies especially, it is regulated. And regulation, as you know, can only be imposed by government because it needs a legislative instrument. So private sector cannot enforce regulations. But market responds in its own way, and buyers rule the market. You may meet the regulation, but your buyer may still not be buying your product. Ultimately, you are concerned more with the buyer than with the regulation, because whatever buyer buys, you would like to produce. You have to sell as a manufacturer. And the buyers are driven by various factors globally, I am talking of, especially in developed markets. They are concerned about the risk of the products. They are concerned about the liability issues. They are concerned that if they sell a product and if something goes wrong, they may have to face huge liability, especially in developed economies. You know that liabilities laws are very strong, not so in India. There is also this growing breed of people who want eco-friendly products, who want socially compliant products, who want higher quality. They are willing to pay for higher quality. So this space is occupied by voluntary, even private certifications. I mean, voluntary certification need not be governmental. In fact, generally in developed markets, it's not governmental at all. Voluntary certifications in developed countries are usually private certifications. And without, you know ISO 9001, you have heard of ISO 14001. I'm sure many of you have heard of ISO 45001, which are known international standards. But there are private standards in various sectors, like I have listed some of them. BRCGS, British Retail Consortium. This is in food. FSSC 22000, another in food. It's a private standard. AS 9100, it's an industry-driven standard in aerospace. IATA 16949, which is a industry-driven standard in automotive sector. RAP or Ecotext in textiles. Now, all these sectors are regulated in one way or the other, and yet these are all international certifications, international standards and international certifications. Even if they are private certifications, they are internationally followed. Even in India, you would find that there are about 600 odd aerospace AS 9100 certificates. There are a number of IATF 16949 certificates. So whether we like it or not, the fact is that voluntary certifications are here to stay. They are not going anywhere. So we might as well prepare for them rather than crib about them, that why, when I am already regulated and I am meeting regulations, why am I required to comply with voluntary standards? The fact is they are here. Now coming to medical devices specifically. Now, even in medical device sector, voluntary certification is nothing new. All of you are familiar with ISO 13485, which is a voluntary standard. Despite regulations in developed countries, voluntary ISO 13485 certification is globally practiced, globally recognized. And I would like to give you some figures which come from ISO. ISO does an annual survey of certifications, management system certification, and this is the latest available, which is 2020 figure, which came in somewhere in September of 21. And it shows, as you can see, ISO 9001, 9,16,842 certificates worldwide. ISO 14,001, 3.5 lakhs. ISO 45,001, about 1.9 lakhs. ISO 27,001, 44,000, 45,000. ISO 20,000 is one which is not of relevance to medical device sector, was food safety. But rest all are of relevance, because 9,001 is quality, 14,001 is environment. A medical device manufacturer may want an environmental certification, may want an occupational health and safety certification like 45,001. Information security 27,001, certainly for many medical devices it will be relevant, because a lot of medical devices are using now software, etc., etc. And ISO 13485 certification, 25,000 certificates worldwide. This is the figure. So it's sixth in rank among various management system standards worldwide. And most countries are adopting QMS in regulation. You know, Schedule 5 in MDR also is QMS. And they are even recognizing ISO 13485 directly. And USFDA is the latest now moving to ISO 135, incorporating ISO 13485 in its regulations. So one can certainly say that whatever be the regulations prevalent in the country, in India or elsewhere, ISO 13485 certification would remain relevant globally. So my first advice to industry would be, especially if you are looking to export, please hold on to your ISO 13485 certificate, because that is something which is globally accepted. Now, what is the scene in India? I'm sure in the last session you've done it, but there's no harm doing a recap. We are in transition as far as regulations are concerned. We have Medical Devices Rules 2017, which was notified with effect from 1st January 2018, but it was limited only to notified devices. And as of today, it is limited only to notified devices, and there are 37 categories of devices which are notified. It's an excellent development, but somebody realized, I'm glad that somebody realized that device by device notification is not the way to regulate. I mean, you could go on forever for 5,000 and 6,000 devices that we are talking about. You could spend your lifetime notifying them. So somebody recognized that, and they defined medical devices, which was notified on 11th of February 2020. A definition has been given. Now, anything which falls in that definition is a medical device and therefore deemed to be under MDR, the purview of MDR. There was also a transition plan, because you can't overnight switch to regulation of 5,000 odd devices in the country. So there is a transition plan which is currently on. And as per the transition plan, 18 months were given for voluntary registration with ISO 13485 certificate. Mind you, with ISO 13485 certificate. That period is over. Some relaxation has been done. I just heard that by 30th of June, voluntary registration has been extended. Well, that's the relaxation. But for Class A and B devices, 30 months were given, after which licensing will apply, which means up to 30th September 2022. And for Class C and D, 42 months were given, which means up to 30th September 2023. What it means is that until 1st of October 2023, we would still not be fully regulated in India. I mean, this is important to understand, that our complete regulation will be in place if these timelines hold. Mind you, if these timelines hold, because with COVID, industry repeatedly asked for relaxation in timelines. The relaxation in 18-month voluntary registration was given. So I'm not sure whether this will hold, but if these hold, 1st October 2023 is the earliest when we would be fully regulated. Until then, we are not fully regulated as medical device sector. So what happens in the market? If you are not fully regulated, who assures quality in the market? No one. And we have had this problem. We have seen multiple stories of PPEs and masks and pulse oximeters and oxygen concentrators and ventilators. There are stories about substandard products. In COVID, these products became very, very important. And all these products, unfortunately, were not notified in the notified category. So all of these products were not regulated and are still not regulated. So how do you assure quality? If there is no regulation in place, what is the way of assuring quality in the market? Ministry of Textiles realized the problem, so they tried something testing-based certification of PPEs in early 2020. They started with coveralls. Then they realized that did not work. I mean, I don't have to go into the reasons. Professionals like us would quickly understand that that could not work. The model was not correct. And then they went ahead with relying on BIS certification and told all PPE manufacturers, please go for BIS certification, which has indeed brought some discipline in the market as far as PPE is concerned. But the problem with BIS certification was that BIS said, due to the need for public procurement, that certified manufacturers should supply only to public for government procurement. And therefore, a common man in the market, when you and I are going and buying a mask in the market, there's no guarantee that you are buying the right kind of mask. I mean, you will be wearing a mask. I'm doing this. I'm fortunate to have some industry friends who have given me masks free of cost. And therefore, I'm hoping that they are good quality because they sent it to me, a quality professional. But in general, what you are buying, everybody is buying in the market. There's no assurance of quality, and there's no assurance of quality of any other product because they are not regulated yet. That is where voluntary certification is something which becomes relevant. How do, as an industry, how do I demonstrate to a buyer that I adhere to standards? So, of course, ISO 13485 certification is available. As I said, it's already been going on for years, but it does not assure product compliance. It is a management system certification. It's a certification of a good quality management system within the medical device manufacturing factory. But it does not, although it indirectly asks what standard are you making the product and how are you assuring that you consistently make to that product. But it is, at the end of the day, it is not product certification, not product compliance. Now, 13485 is asked by law, by registration, by saying that registration will be only with 13485 certificate. So for the time being, it's a regulatory requirement, as you can see, because the law says so. Now, then if there is no local certification, then naturally, Professor Gupta spoke about imported quality product. Naturally, a buyer, a doctor or a hospital would say, show me something, and you will end up showing US FDA approval or CE mark. And I am sure my colleague, Mr. Jaina, will speak about it. There's lots of fraud CE marking certificates. Anyway, it will please you that you got a CE mark. Honestly, I bought a concentrator last month for my mom, and I got a concentrator with a certificate which was, as Jaina would describe, unauthentic certificate. So I told that manufacturer, please change your certificate is not okay. So therefore, you need assurance. Common consumer needs assurance. I am buying an oxygen concentrator. I am spending 40,000 rupees. I need an assurance. It's a good quality. How do I get that assurance? I have no means of testing it myself. BIS certification certainly is an option because BIS runs a certification scheme. I've been in BIS for 26 years. But it runs a scheme against BIS standards only. So if there is no BIS standard available, and for several devices, there is no BIS standard available, there cannot be any certification by BIS. So that is one option. Second option is, and there's a presentation I see on another of my colleagues, Dr. Manish Pandey here, that Icmed scheme, which I was involved in actually designing way back in 2015-16, that there is an option of product certification which has been launched last year, which has a provision for certifying to any recognized standard, which allows you to choose the standard you want to choose. It could be other than BIS standard. It could be a American standard, it could be European standard, it could be an international standard. And it is using third-party accredited bodies like notified bodies, medical device rules uses. And so it is something which is harmonized with international practices. But to my mind, announced too late and hasn't really taken off in that sense because there's confusion. Why should we go for Icmed Plus certification? Why should you go for Icmed Plus certification is If you want to demonstrate compliance within the local market today, either go for BI certification or go for Icmed Plus certification. Because otherwise, those who are holding US FDA approval and CE mark will have a head start over you. They have always had a head start over. Industry keeps on complaining that government also prefers. Government has tried very hard to keep on saying that please don't give preference to US FDA or CE, but the fact remains is it still rules the market. But what happens post-regulation after 1st October 2023 when regulations are in place? Please remember the nuances. MDR 2017 does not require any certification. It prescribes BI standards. It says audit by notified bodies for class A and B. It says audit by the regulator himself for class C and D. It doesn't talk certification at all. So what happens to this 13485 certificate that you will get, you would have got for registration? I wish CDSU will give some consideration to those manufacturers who hold 13485 post regulation also. But my advice would be, please hold on to that certificate because it has global value, especially if you are looking at global market at any stage. Don't let go of that certificate. If you worked hard to get that certificate, hold on to that. But if you get one of those unauthentic certificates, which Mr. Jena would talk about, discard it immediately. What about BI certification? Again, not required as per MDR, unless insisted upon by the buyer. Now, if GEM says that for PPs, we would only register those who are with BI certification, then you may still have to go, despite compliance to the regulation, you may still have to go for BI certification. And then what about Icmed certification? Again, not required as per the law, not required. MDR doesn't require BI certification, doesn't require ISO 13485 certification, doesn't require Icmed certification. But if it is insisted upon by your buyer, if GEM says, I'll honor BI certification or Icmed certification, then you might have to go for it. Or another option, it might be pitched for global acceptance. How it will be pitched for global acceptance? Let me explain. So next question would be, okay, this is for domestic market. What happens for exports? What do we do for exports? Now, you know, as I have already said, that regulations of foreign countries, they comprise both in inverted comma standards to be complied with and the manner in which compliance is to be demonstrated. So any manufacturer can directly approach a foreign regulator and get himself approved. Follow the standards, follow the procedure, and get yourself approved. It may involve an audit of the factory by the regulator, sometimes by a designated third party like a notified body in Europe, or it's called approved body in UK. But this is both a cumbersome and expensive proposition because you are going to pay in dollars to have your audit done. But the fact is that this is a route open and majority of exports have gone through this route. The pharma industry, the food industry, and whatever limited medical device industry which has gone abroad has gone on its own, just gone to approach the foreign regulator, demonstrated compliance, taken the trouble to do that, taken the expenditure and got themselves approved.
Mr. Jory,
what can government do?
May I request that you may...
Yeah, a couple of slides.
Yeah.
So what can the government do? One is make your regulation on par with global standards. Unfortunately, current MDR is not on par with global standards. What is prescribed BI standard, which may not be global. The Schedule 5 is based on old ISO 13485, which is also not in line with the current standard. And therefore, there are two ways. Either you approach directly or you institute an internal system in India, which can be accepted abroad. I mean, we have done it in, APIDA did it in organic, EIC has done it in seafood. We have instituted a system to certify exports as per foreign standards, global standards, and get that system accepted. So you are certified here and you are accepted in foreign market. This is the route to go, which I am pushing government to do that. And so this is the route where possibly Icmed certification would have a role to play because it is based on international standards. It can be pitched in. If QCI is intelligent, it would go to the government and pitch it in as a certification, which should be accepted by foreign governments. Therefore, it will be cheaper for the industry to get foreign approval rather than getting themselves, applying directly to the foreign regulator and getting audited by themselves. So that's the way forward. So in conclusion, I would say that since regulations are not fully in place, a local certification is certainly needed in my view, rather than giving a head start to US FDA or CE approvals. Options are BIS certification and Icmed scheme. to my mind, public procurement should encourage these certifications because voluntary certifications rely on incentives. They are not compulsion. So there have to be market demand. And to my mind, CDSU, if somebody is listening, should give consideration and weightage to voluntary certifications because it is globally recognized that voluntary compliance is better than mandatory compliance. People find shortcuts to meet the compulsion, but voluntarily, when they do because they need it. That's why they do. So voluntary compliance is always better. And as far as global acceptance is concerned, we should have an institutional system of certifying to global standards right here in India, which possibly Icmed 13485 plus is, and present it something on for voluntary certification. Thank you very much for the time that you have given. I hope some clarity.
Uh, yeah. So thank you very much, Mr. Johri. And I must say that you have brought a very important aspect, and that is that our complete regulations will be in place only by October 2023, when we will be fully regulated. So what do we do till then? BIS standards and Icmed, as you said, will partially meet the requirements. And maybe that is something which we really need to push forward. And that is a food for thought for everyone. And as you have also brought out that ISO 13485 is something which is relevant, very relevant globally. And it is something which is, as long as it is genuine, it is something which one should keep and not let it go. Thank you. I think you have really driven home the point, and all the people who are listening in, especially who are listening in from the regulatory side or from the government side, they will have some clarity, some more clarity as to what your thoughts are. Thank you very much, sir, and you have brought on some very important points. And since you talked about IC 13485, and we are going to have the next discussion on the same aspect. So I can also see there is a very good continuity. So next is, of course, Mr. T. Karthi. He's the lead consultant, Nucleus Consultants, Chennai, and he has been practicing management systems consulting and training services for the past 16 years. He's the lead auditor for ISO 9001, ISO 13485, AS 9100, ISO 14001, and other management systems. So he's also into sector-specific management systems, particularly aerospace and defense, railways, rolling stocks, and medical devices. And as I said, he's running a management system consulting firm, Nucleus Consultants. And today, he's going to speak about ISO 13485, the medical devices standard certification and implementation. So over to you, Mr. Karthi.
Yeah, so good afternoon all. Thanks for the opportunity. So while sharing my screen, please confirm, is it visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm just touching what is this ISO 13485 and the requirements related to implementation point of view. So the standard ISO 13485, most of us are aware, it's an ISO standard. It's a management system standard for medical devices. If you look at our medical device regulation 2017, fifth schedule also talks about quality management system. So this standard is applicable to these type of players. If you do any one or more of the stages in your medical device life cycle, either you are a designer or a manufacturing sector or a contract manufacturer, or you are a distributor or you are providing installation service for medical devices, whatever you do, this particular standard ISO 13485 is applicable. Sometimes what will happen, you do final medical device as a OEM, right? Sometimes we do contract manufacturing, even you do a small sub-assemblies, even raw material for medical devices, the standard is meant for them. If an organization is trying to implement ISO 13485, first they need to identify what is their role. When you say role, what role exactly you play in the life cycle? You are a OEM or a distributor, so try to identify it. Based on this role, there are a lot of regulatory requirements applicable. As Anil Joris had mentioned, MDR, we are going to regulate, right? As a manufacturer, you are going to be get regulated. But as on today, dealers, medical device distributors, medical device raw material manufacturers, right? Medical device sub-assembly manufacturer, as a vendors, right? They are not coming under this, right? As a OEM, you need to be regulated. That's what you need to identify your role. Then what activities you perform within this. Then you need to adopt your quality management system. This QMS is in line with ISO 13485. And we need to understand one thing when implementing the standard, whatever written in ISO 13485, it's only complementary requirement. It's not going to replace the product technical requirement. Since it's a process standard, it not talks about any one particular product. It's very generic standard. The whole purpose of the standard, you have to fulfill the regulatory requirement for safety and performance of the medical device. Again, I'll repeat, the standard is not talk about any product requirement. For product requirement, of course, you have to refer Indian standard or IEC standard or ISO standard, whatever applicable. And this is the committee who creates the standard, ISO 22210. They develop a lot of standards for medical devices. ISO 13485 is developed by them. Once you say management system, all the management system is based on this principle: plan, do, check, act. When you are practicing, when you are implementing ISO 13485, what will happen most of the time? People say, okay, we have a quality department, they will take care of it. We have a regulatory affairs department, they will take care of it. But the concept of this quality management system is for managing the entire organizational quality, not just the product quality. So PDCA is very important thing when we look at this. So that's why the standard emphasizes on the process approach. When you say process approach, a lot of process we have in an organization. We have sales process, design process, purchase process, production, post-production, a lot of process we do, and also support functions like HR, IT, a lot of processes we have, right? So this ISO 13485 clearly defines that how we need to manage these processes. And this process approach we can also interpret like a turtle approach. Every process in our organization, when you are practicing this ISO 13485, when you are implementing this ISO 13485, we need to adopt this. Let's take any simple process. I'm going to assemble a medical device, a simple medical device assembly activity I do. So the input I'm getting fittings, various components from the different source of my vendors. I'm do the assembly and final products delivered to my customers. This is a simple process flow. Input, there is some value addition, there is the output. To deliver this, what are the resources I need? There are some requirement in 13485. Who has to do this? What is the competency requirement? You have to determine. There are some requirement related to that. How I am going to do this? Here only exactly your core operational processes comes into picture. Then finally, we have to test it, measure it, inspect it, verify it, validate it. So all put together, we call this as process approach. This 13485, various places using a word risk. And many times the word risk is we are wrongly interpreting, but when it's come to 13485, it's very clear. The risk is specific to safety of the medical device, specific to performance of the medical device, and specific to the regulatory requirement. That's what all about the word risk we need to interpret. And one more thing here, the word regulatory requirement also limited to medical device safety, medical device performance. This standard, the purpose of 13485 itself, quality management system for regulatory purposes. Even that the regulatory purposes is limited to medical device safety, medical device performance. So this is what the exact requirements of the standard. There are 8 clauses. Any organization is going to practice, going to implement this 13485, they should follow this. The first 3 about general, how to approach the standard. What is the standard? That's what the first three classes. The next are the exact requirements. As the organization, you need to demonstrate this through this process approach. So first of all, identify your scope, what you do, what is your role. And there are a lot of requirements in the standard. If you feel some of the requirements are not applicable in this class 6, 7, 8, you are free to say that it is not applicable, but you need to justify why it is not applicable. Some organization, they may not do design and development. For example, 7 talks about design and development. Anything related to these sections, you are free to exclude. And there are different type of terms we are using in this 13485. You can refer, there is a standard ISO 9000. This gives the fundamentals and vocabulary. Many times people are wrongly interpreting the word quality management system. Maybe let's ask this, what is the word quality? How do we interpret the word quality? See, we have a lot of requirements. When you say requirements, a lot of requirements comes like this. QC, QA, quality planning, quality improvement. But what exactly the QMS is? How do we interpret the term QMS? Who is responsible for QMS? Is it quality control function? I take this definition from ISO 9000, which made it very clear. Quality management is managing the entire organizational quality. This includes QC, QA, quality planning, quality improvement, all put together. We call it as quality management. So how to implement this? Standard gives you the clear requirement. Any management system simply says what to do. How to do is purely with the organization, depends on the size, culture, what products they do, what services they do. So that's why ISO 13485 come up with these requirements, generic requirements that we need to implement. Class 4 talks about, first of all, you should document your QMS. When you say document, it should be established, implemented, maintained, and continually improved. Whatever the role you are playing, you need to do this. And very important requirement is risk, risk-based approach. ISO 13485 made it very clear, when you are implementing this, we have to apply risk-based thing. When you say the risk, a lot of places the risk is appearing in the standard. When you outsource any of your activity, manufacturing activity, apply risk. Accordingly, you have to put your controls. When you use any software, there are various places we are using software. Software for your quality management system, software for your manufacturing activity, software for testing activity. All those places we need to validate our softwares. What basis we need to validate? Again, based on the risk, we have to validate. And we give a lot of training in an organization when you're running a business, right? You're going to qualify your team. You're going to ensure people are competent. So how are you going to verify the training effectiveness? For example, you may do sterilization activity, you may have a clean room setup. So people who are involving in this activity, they need to be competent. And what basis we are going to verify the training effectiveness? Again, based on the risk, the training methodology can be adopted. And when you design, develop a product, when you realize a product, again, there is a risk-based thinking, a separate standard ISO 14971 that specifically talks about risk management for medical devices. And various places, if you look at the standard ISO 13485, it's keep on emphasizing we should have a risk-based approach. When you establish a QMS, we must consider it. And remember this turtle approach, right? Every process needs to be managed by this process approach. And any changes happen, of course, we need to apply a strong change management system. See, once you are certified to ISO 13485, that's not the end of the story, right? There are a lot of changes. Changes happen to your product, changes in regulation, changes in supplier end. How this change is going to impact your medical device safety, medical device performance. This needs to be considered when you are implementing this management system. And there is one critical requirement in ISO 13485. It doesn't allow you to transfer the risks. Technically, if you are outsourcing any activity, organization, as a manufacturer, you are responsible. You have to retain the responsibility. So whatever the subcontracting activity you do, you have to have some agreement with them, quality agreement with them based on the risk we need to adopt this. And similar way, standard asks us to retain a lot of documentation. It asks us to maintain a lot of documentation. Because you need to demonstrate your compliances, right? How you are going to demonstrate? You should have a policy, you should have objective, you should have a documented quality manual. There are a lot of documented procedures, records we have to establish to fulfill, to demonstrate these requirements. In addition to that, regulatory requirements has a lot of documentation requirement that also we have to comply. And all this document needs to be controlled. How many years you are going to retain the document? How many years you are going to maintain the document? If you have any patient health information that needs to be kept confidential. So those requirements we have to define in these processes. Like this, there are some general requirement, QMS requirement, which is addressed in class 4. Here, one of the important requirement is medical device file. As a manufacturer, 13485 made it very clear we should maintain a medical device file, which consists of various requirements. How you are going to manufacture your product, how you are going to label it, how you are going to pack it, how you are going to design it, the construction, and this file also needs to be controlled. These are all the some of the requirements which is addressed in class 4. And class 5 mainly talks about management responsibility. Top management commitment is pretty crucial in every management system. The same is reflected in ISO 13485. When you are implementing this, you try to focus on this quality policy and quality objective. As a top management, what we are trying to achieve from this medical devices quality management system? Is there any regulatory requirement which I need to comply? Presently, I may not have a clean room. Presently, I may not have a system which there the regulation calls for some infrastructural changes. Those needs to be considered when you are establishing your policies and objectives. To manage this ISO 13485, internally, you need to identify the team, a core team or cross-functional team. And they have some responsibility, authority to practice this. And we need to conduct management review at planned intervals. See, in an organization, you are conducting a lot of review meetings, sales review, quality review, business review, but you have to dedicatedly seek to review this performance of your medical devices quality management system. These are all some of the unique requirements which we need to practice on this ISO 13485. And when it's come to class 6 has 4 important subclasses. To run this medical device business, to manufacture, to comply the regulatory requirement, what are the resources you need? Man, machine, material, everything we need to determine and provide. When it's come to human resource, there are some regulatory requirements we need to comply. When it's come to the personal educational qualification and all. And this is very important for us, infrastructure requirement and work environment requirement. The primary risk in medical device industry is contamination, right? How you are going to prevent the product mix-up. Ensure the products are manufactured in controlled environment. How you are going to do this sterile environment, how you are going to reduce the risk. So those needs to be considered when you are implementing ISO 13485. These are the key factors we should focus on this. And coming to product realization. See, many people, this product realization is connected with only not just the production planning, it goes beyond that. How you are going to realize a product, concept to cash, the entire life cycle we have to consider. What are all the risks involved in this product realization? Risk in product, risk in your manufacturing process, risk in post-delivery activity, risk in packaging, risk in labeling, all those things. For this purpose, we have a separate standard, ISO 14971. When you are implementing this, we have to consider that also. And this 14971 is a separate standard. It's not a certifiable standard, it's only a guideline. This talks about how the risk needs to be demonstrated, how the risk needs to be identified, assessed, how we are going to control. So as a manufacturer, we need to address this. And when it's come to your customer related process, how you are getting inquiries, how you are reviewing your contracts, what type of information you want to give to your customers, especially the product needs any installation, servicing, any training, user training is required or not. Those needs to be identified at this particular stage. And of course, the core important activity is design and development. There are a lot of unique requirement here. Here, as part of design and development input, you are referring a lot of regulatory requirements. You may refer BIS standards, as part of product design input, or you may refer some IEC standard. It depends on the product requirements. And verification validation. Here you have to perform clinical evaluation or performance evaluation to prove that your design has fulfills its intended purpose, clinically safe. You need to demonstrate the medical device is safe and the performances are meeting the design requirements. And once everything is done, you have to transfer your design to the manufacturing mass production activity. So up to this 7.1 is quite interesting requirement. It starts about overall life cycle, how you plan, how you design the product characteristics, how you develop your manufacturing processes, how you are going to validate. After that only it's ready to go for continuous production or mass production, right? You need to transfer this file to your own manufacturing house or to a subcontractor. That is what this particular requirement is. Once this is done, then we are going to procure the material purchasing. What basis you are going to select a supplier, what basis you are going to control them. Based on the risk, you have to determine. And of course, you have to verify the incoming products. Either you give it a third party or do it with your in-house laboratory. Then go for your manufacturing activity. Before production, a lot of activity ISO 13485 asks us to do. 7.1, planning of product realization. 7.2, customer related process. 7.3, design and development. And 7.4, purchasing. After that only, we come into the production environment. You have to prove that the product conforms to the spec you already defined. The infrastructure you already qualified. And whatever the testing, verification activity that you are supposed to do here. And here one critical requirement is there, special process validation. As part of a medical device manufacturer, you may do a lot of special process in your organization. I could say critical processes, right? You may do some molding or cable harness or sterilization or plastics. So a lot of technologies are now emerging as a manufacturing technology. So once you adopted those technologies in your medical device, you need to validate how the intended purpose can be achieved, whether the safety and performance of the medical device can be achieved or not. So we need to adopt some control related to this. Then feedback.
Yeah, I'll
monitoring and measurement. If anything goes wrong, how you are going to report with the regulatory authorities, post-market studies, product recalls. So we should establish some processes, documents and procedures for this. And we need to conduct audit at planned intervals and measure, monitor the product and process. These are all the various requirements which is specified in ISO 13485 standard. But as far as implementation concerned, the primary focus is on actions. What type of corrective action we are initiating to improve our medical device quality management system. In case of any non-conformity, if you are detected within your organization or post-delivery, how we are going to manage, that needs to be demonstrated. And we need to take systemic correction, corrective action, and preventive action. So once
Mr. Karti, I will
Yes,
request you. I'll request you to.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the last few slides.
Right. Sure.
Yes. This is the final milestone, I could say, implementation path for getting ISO 13485 certificate. The organization should be a legal entity. Form a core team, that's very important, and get trained. There are a lot of resources available about the standard, about QMS and all. Define your role and identify what are the applicable regulatory requirements for your device, and we need to comply it. Then have a ISO 13485 documented system. Conduct an internal audit, conduct a management review. Then contact a certification body. Of course, it should be authentic certification body. Even Mr. Jana will cover that in next session. And the certification body comes twice, stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is like adequacy audit, and stage 2 is the initial certification audit. Once you are certified, and which is valid for 3 years, subject to your annual surveillance audit. So this is what the overall implementation module for ISO 13485. Plan, do, check, act. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Karti. I believe you have done a real deep dive into ISO 13485 and with such clarity that I'm confident even the non-experts out here would have understood the nitty-gritties of this, like your talk about the PCDA framework, Plan, Do, Check, Act, your talk about the turtle approach, the 8 clauses of ISO 13485, the quality management systems, your emphasis on risk. I think I really like that. Your absolute emphasis on risk, especially the quality risk-based approach in quality management, and how you cannot transfer the risk when outsourcing. I mean, you outsource only the building, but the construction or the making of things, but not the risk. You can't transfer the risk, and your quality agreements are required. You talked about resource management, product realization, certification requirements. In fact, you have taken a full class within that in the 15 to 20 minutes. And thank you very much. I'm sure the audience has loved it. And I can see a few questions also coming up, but which of course, for the audience, I would like to say that these would be addressed towards the end, because we have so many such very quality speakers coming up, and we need to hear them out. And one of the next quality speaker that I'm going to talk about is Mr. Mrityunjay Jaina, who is a scientist G and head accreditation and training at the Andhra Med Tech Zone, AMTZ, Vizag. He is also the former director operations of National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies, NABCB, a constituent board of Quality Council of India. He has, again, we have really got some very experienced people amongst us. He has more than 27 plus years of experience in the field of quality, working in management system certification, and 13 plus years in NABCB. He's the most qualified person, if I may say, to take on the topic, which is a risk of unauthentic certification in manufacturing. And you should link it to the talk by Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, when he talked and said that it is a win-win situation when you go for certification, yet people are ready to lose. So yeah, over to you, Mr. Jaina, for your talk.
Thank you, Colonel Bhargava, and good afternoon to all. And thank you, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for inviting AMTZ to make a presentation on risk of unauthentic certification in medical device manufacturing. I'll just share my. So hope it is.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll be talking about the risk of unauthentic certification in medical device manufacturing. So I would also thank to Mr. Johri sir and Karthik. Because of him, there is no need of first 2 slides, because they have already spoken about what is certification, why it is required, and that we have already gone through. Then our focus is who can set up a certification, because as we have already discussed in this forum starting, that certification in medical devices are required for the manufacturing or the services or any system in the medical device sector. So my answer is anyone can set up a certification. That is a risk. So there is no bar, no legal bar, or anyone setting up a certification. So anyone, it is a voluntary, anyone can set up a certification, and can be it is a proprietorship companies, certification body, or a partnership, society, private, limited, government, non-government, non-profit, profit, anyone can set up a certification. So what is required? Only 2 things. One is people, the competent people, and the documentation. With these 2 resources, anyone can set up a certification. So that is the reason why it is a risky area to get a good certification, authentic certification from the market for our manufacturing of medical devices. So if it is a governmental set of certification, then one can rely. Yes, it is a government. It has a set of system. There must be something. So I can rely. The manufacturer can rely for going to a certification body which is in a nature of governmental sector. So by name like Tata, Birla, it has a brand name. So I can rely, manufacturer can rely, yes, if it is not government, let's say take Tata, Birla or some big branding certification body, yes, one can rely. If it is a private certification, then what? So how to rely? That certificate, whatever the certification is providing to a manufacturer of medical devices, whether it is 13485 management system certification, or it is CE marking, or it is any sort of personal certification, product certification, or management system certification in the medical device sector. So the only answer, the response is accreditation. That means accreditation can check whether the certification granted to you as a manufacturer of medical devices is correct or not. So the certification, what we are talking about, ISO 13485 or ISO 9000, whatever the certification, are based on 7 principles. So any management system standards we are talking about, so based on impartiality, competence, responsibility, openness, confidentiality, responsiveness to complaints, and risk-based approach. These are the 7 components, principles based on which any certification, management system, product certification, any certification is based on that. So it has to be, the certification has to be impartially issued. So there should not be a factor of partiality. That means just whatever the standard requires, it has to be checked whether it is implemented in the organization or not. Impartiality has to be maintained by the certification body to issue certificate. Then competence, the certification body must have competent resources. Competent resources for the, I mean to say, document review or the contract review, application review, and doing the audits competently. The auditor should be competent enough to have the knowledge in that particular sector of medical devices. That is the competence. And also competently that has been reviewed. The decision of the certification body must have been reviewed competently, the competent person, through a competent team or competent person. Then responsibility. The certification body must take the responsibility. And also the client also has some responsibility as per the respective standards. Then openness. The certification body should certify the client openness, taking the in a right way. If the standard requires certain requirement, that has to be followed. So no means, I mean to say, if there is an input coming from the auditee or the manufacturer, that has to be taken openly. Then confidentiality, because the certification body, while doing the audits of the client or the manufacturers, at the same time, they are exposed to a lot of confidential information of the organizations, of the product, of the medical devices, that has to be kept confidential. Responsiveness to complaints. Whenever there is a complaint, it has to be addressed. Risk-based approach. So risk, all type of risk has to be taken into consideration while giving the, means granting a certificate. So these are the 7 components, principles of certification. Then what consumer should know as a consumer or the end user of the certificate ISO 13485, let's say. So what we should know, because there is a system certification. 13485 ISO 13485 is a system certification. That means the product is not certified. C is a product certification. But if it is 13485, it is a system certification. That means the consumer, the user expect a good product, but not certified product. And similarly, if it is a C marking or the ISA mark or egg mark, so then it is a product is certified. Then management system, as I have given example, that is 13485, ISO 13485 or ISO 9001. It is a system certification and not to be used on the product, just opposite to system certification. So open market, as you know, there are a lot of certification body, foreign certification operating in India, because India is a huge market in the globe, whether it is 9001 or it is a medical devices. Now, as you know, a lot of manufacturing is coming up in India. A lot of outside, I mean to say, foreign manufacturers coming up and setting their industry here, because there is a huge demand in medical devices in India. So it is open market, so open number of certification bodies are coming and mushrooming in India also. And similarly, the accreditation body also, foreign accreditation body, they are operating in India. As you know, NABCB is the National Accreditation Board of India, but there are 10 more accreditation bodies who are actively in Indian market, because there is a market, there is a demand. So unaccredited certificate, no bar. As you know, this certification is a voluntary. There is no mandatory certification as per the law in India specifically. I'm talking about. Similarly, accreditation, setting a accreditation body is also a voluntary, and also unaccredited certificates are also available in the market. So how to identify? So benefits of certification, as you know, I will skip this slide. So issue of certification, what are the issues? The biggest issue, as we know, 9,001 certificates means any type of certificate is available with any number of any amount of the fees that is available. So many are unauthentic certificates. So the biggest challenge, biggest issue in certification is inherent conflict of interest. What is that? The certification body is charging for the certificate. It's obvious. It's a business. So if I will issue a certificate to manufacturer, then I'll take some charges as per the fee amount, mandate rate or the certification fees, something. So that is the biggest rate. That means if I am issuing a certificate, then I am demanding a money because that is a fee. So which is globally, it is the same situation. So it is an inherent conflict of interest that has to be taken care of. So impartiality is the second issue, biggest issue, impartial. So as I mentioned, this is one of the 7 principles of certification, any type of certification, and one is impartial. The certification body should issue the certificate impartially. If there is a partiality came into the picture in the decision of the certification or doing the audit before issuing the certificate, then it is an impartial issue. So what are those? There are also third, integrity and ethics. So I mean to say the certification body, without going to the visiting the site or the manufacturing site, issuing the certificates, or without sending the competent auditor. Competent means, I mean to say, if I am going to do the audit of a IVD unit, then I should have, the team should have a competency in the IVD. It's not like oxygen concentrator. So similarly, the same kind of person, same competency of the scope that we are going to audit by a certification body should have the same competency in the team. So that is not there. And many times, generally the certification body what does, if the team is not competent, then they have to add a competent, I mean to say, the expert, who is not auditor, but expert has expertise in that particular sector. So then the team will be competent. So it has to be taken care of. But there are a lot of unethical issues and integrity issue that without meeting the requirements, the certifications are being granted by the some of the certification body. And my experience being in 13 years spent as a director in NABCB, so more than 20 certification bodies have been penalized and 12 suspended, 8 cancellation. This is my experience, and almost all are on malpractices, not going to the site. And even if the team, as an audit team, has gone to the site, they are only in place of 4% in the plan, you will see, but only 1 person has gone for half day. So that's sort of without doing the audits and issuing the certificate. So those things I have already discussed, the typical issues, all auditors not going on site, technical experts not going on the site, audit days reduced, nexus with the consultants, not declared that wife or son run the consultancy, means one person is in the certification body and doing the audit, and his wife is running a consultancy. So it is a nexus, means win-win situation on both those sides. No need to do the consultancy and the certification is granted. So these are also observed in my past experience. So I am quoting that. So there are also franchisee not authorized to. There are a franchisee model in India specifically. There are a lot of cases franchisee operating in India. That means the main parent organization of the certification body is in UK, let's say, or USA, and they have franchisee in India. The franchisee are supposed to do carry out the audit and submit the everything, the documentation to the parent organization, parent certification body, and the decision is taken from the parent organization. In this case, so only the local, the franchisee body has to do the only auditing activities, or the taking the contract, or application, submitting the application from the client to the head office, and doing the audits and submitting the reports to the head office of the certification body. Then certification body's head office issues the certificate. So what happens in India, many cases we have observed that the client, I mean to say, the franchisee in India, they source 20 certificates issued from India, but parallelly they issued another 80 certificate without informing to the head office of the certification body. So that is a great issue, huge issue I have seen in my past experience. So that is the biggest issue. Marketing associates, so manage client including consulting and certification, means the certification body has a hired a consultant, tie up with the consultant. The consultant does the audit at the client premises and submit the report, and does the consultant also hand-holding system also, which is conflict of interest. So that also works. So based on all these issues, so IAF, that is International Accreditation Forum, which is the association of accreditation bodies globally. So NABC is part of that IAF MLA. So they have prepared, published a IAF Mandatory Document 23. So a document on franchisee, how to operate, how to control. The main certification body has to control on the franchisee branches throughout the globe. That is the documents which talks about that. Then declaration of certificates, as I mentioned, franchisee had, let's say, issue 100 certificates, only 20 certificate has been communicated to the head office. So that is in the register. But 80 certificates without communicating to the head office, they have issued here. So taken the money and everything. So that is not a valid certificate. So again, even if the certificate has a accreditation, that we have to see whether that certification body has the competent resources and that scope has been approved by the accreditation body, means specific sector. So there are 39 sectors: food, pharma, construction. Even in the medical device sector also, there are again 27 technical areas in medical devices. So that we have to see before going to a certification body for 13485 certification. We have to check whether this certification body has competence and has granted by accreditation body for that particular scope. I mean, it's a stent, let's say. So it is a implantable high risk medical device. Whether that CB has competent resources and verified by accreditation body and granted for that particular scope or not. That is also most important. Not only by going that whether the accreditation body has accredited this particular certification body. So we have to see those competent resources for that particular scopes. So this is all about that. Then foreign AB's accreditation body, it is a free market, as I have mentioned. There are a lot of foreign accreditation bodies operating in India. Though we have a national accreditation body, NABCB, which looks after the accreditation activities in India, and any certificate issued under NABCB accreditation logo is accepted globally, because this NABCB is a member to IAF, International Accreditation Forum, and they have signed a MOU, mutual multilateral agreements with IAF. So any certificate issued by a certification body in India with an NABCB logo is accepted globally. So some of the certificates I will show you here. For example, I have just masked the name of the client has been issued this certificate. So this is a certificate issued by a Swiss shop. It is unaccredited. If you see, there is no logo on the certificate. So there is no accreditation body logo. So it is a unaccredited certificates. So it is a unauthentic, means it is not authentic. So next certificate, this is issued by a quality certification labs. So the certificate under unknown accreditation, there is a logo here, but it is not QC KL. So this certificate, if you see the IAF dot, there is a website which can be verified whether the accreditation body is part of IAF or not. So that is iaf.nu. So if you go there by economic or by name, you will find this accreditation body name. Only those 88 accreditation body globally are acceptable globally, means any certificate under NABCB is accepted globally. Similarly, any certificate issued by UCAS in UK, that accreditation body logo in the certificate is accepted India or everywhere, anywhere. So that we have to check whether the accreditation body is there. Here the body, the certificate carries a logo, but that is not part of the IAF system. So similarly, certificate under unknown accreditation, USSC. So it is not part of the IAF infrastructure. So it is not a valid certificate. So it is unauthentic certificate. Similarly,
Mr. Jena, I will request.
Yeah,
you.
just 2-3 slides only. So I'll just, so this is this PPT can be also circulated if required.
Sure.
So I'll not go detail. So this is also USL. It is not also a signatory to IFMLA. This is also, you see the QCI logo is there. QCI is not accreditation body. Only the NABCB, which is constituent board of QCI, is the accreditation body. So QCI logo also used, and one certification body is a certificate on ISO 9001. It is not a valid certificate, not authentic certificate. So HACCP, so it is a guidance standard. So on guidance standard, no one can issue a certificate. So there are two issues here. It is a HACCP is a guidance standard, cannot be issued a certificate, and UASL is the accreditation body logo here. It is mentioned, so it is not a IAF member. So Global Accreditation Board, again, it is a non-IAF. So World Accreditation Council, it is not part of the IAF. So GMP is, again, it is guidance standard. So no certificate has to be issued, and it is also QCI logo is there. So it is not accreditation body. So this is UKF accreditation body. So it is not part of the IAF. So again, this one. Then this is no accreditation. This is a ISC certification body issued a certificate. No accreditation logo is there. So it is not a valid authentic certificate. It is a CE marking. These two certificates I have mentioned here. This is CE marking certificate issued by UK Global. So this is a class 2 product. If you see the scope of product, so it is a class 2 product. And the class 2 product has to be certified, CE has to be certified from notified bodies. And UK Global is not part of the CE, notified body, notified by Europe. So this Nando site is there. So where you will find the 27 notified bodies as per the MDR 17. So this is also another RIR certificate issued by for CE marking. So as per the MDT, so it is a self-declaration certificate. There is no need of notified body. And if it is required, then it has to be by a notified body only, by Europe. So these are the unauthentic certificate, few certificate I have shown the example. So what are the entitles of anybody agreement duly signed by CB? Audit plan for each audit has to be received. We are expecting from the certification body. Then audit team composition to raise objection if there is a team member which is you feel that there is a risk of calling this person entering into your organization and doing the audit, you can raise the objection. So no non-conformities and reports for each audit conducted you are expected from the certification body. Then certificate with all details like date of issue, expiry, scope, name, and address has to be there in the certificate. So these are my suggestion. That is, if you see any certificate, just go to IAF MLA signatory. That is www.iaf.nu. From there, you will find the name of the accreditation body, and from the accreditation body website, you can check the certification body name and also the client manufacturer certificate, whether that has been issued correctly, whether it is declared to them and it is a valid certificate or not. And always expect AB accreditation body logo on the certificate. So just one slide only. This is all about the AMTZ. I remember in the opening address, Professor Gupta mentioned about the 4 medical park in India, and we are the first Andhra MedTech Zone, Andhra Pradesh Medical Technology Zone Limited, which is under state government and also supported by Niti Aayog and DBT and DST of central government. And here it is 250 manufacturers operating, starting from mass manufacturing to the X-ray magnet manufacturing. So we are doing here, and it is a 270-acre land and supported by the government. We are providing 20 common facilities to our manufacturers in this campus. And this is all about MTZ. So this is our MTZ contribution. Every day, 100 ventilators per day we are manufacturing, 1 lakh N95 masks, and 10 lakhs RT-PCR kits per day it is manufactured from here. And where is the time of peak COVID situation? 12 lakh RT-PCR kits were used per day domestically. We are manufacturing 10 lakhs per day. So these are the common facilities. These are our partners. This is one of the scheme on Indian biomedical engineers. That is IBSC scheme council. We are running it. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jena. I believe the way you have covered the various aspects, it is in a very, very practical and organized way. You started off with who can set up a certification body, right? And then how can you distinguish an authentic certification body? How do you do accreditation? What are the 7 principles of certification? what should the consumer know? I think this is one of the most important things that you have brought out. System certification, product certification, open market. And then you also talked about what can be the issues in certification, like the conflict of interest, impartiality, integrity, and ethics, and so on, which plague these certifications most of the times. And a little bit of attention can result in saving a lot of trouble and, more important, saving a lot of time. You also, I think that was a very novel way by which you have shown samples of incorrect accreditation, so that people come to know, especially the audience comes to know how the incorrections can be spotted. And you also spoke about the entitlements and then what to expect. Overall, it has been a very comprehensive and well laid out talk by you. We really compliment you for these efforts, and I am confident that even the audience would have loved this, and especially because these are topics which are very close to the heart, and they are close not because of emotional reasons, but because of financial, time, and your reputation reasons. Yeah, so thank you again. And next, we have a talk on the Indian Certification for Medical Devices, ICMED, which Mr. Johri also talked about quite a bit, and that is going to be the solution, possible solution, once India is in October 2023. And we are going to have Mr. Sharma coming and talking about it. Mr. C.S. Sharma, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Colonel Bhargava. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, as Johri sir has talked about, and Mr. Jena also talked about this solutions in terms of conformity assessment framework, where our Indian manufacturers can develop their own capacities and capabilities in terms of their equivalence to international requirements or standards. So, Quality Council of India is working in the direction since last few years, and as we know that government of India is also quite focused in recent past on certain activities which can enhance the capabilities and capacities of Indian industry and Indian service sector in terms of speed, scale, and no doubt the third one is quality and standards. So a lot of initiatives has been already taken. For example, Made in India movement or Make in India movement, Atmanirbhar Bharat, Vocal for Local, and One Nation, One Standards. So these are certain buzzwords in the market where entire movement seems to be there. So in PAD division, what we are doing, whenever we are receiving any inputs or needs from various stakeholders or industries or industry associations, we try to develop the conformity assessment solutions to cater those needs. For example, in Indian context, in this slide, we can see that there are two parallel systems. One is compliance ecosystem, and second is voluntary certification system or voluntary conformity assessment system. This compliance ecosystem is clearly driven through different acts which are being passed by Parliament, and different rules are being framed on the basis of those acts. And regulators are supposed to monitor and review the compliances of these acts and rules. For example, if we see that in Indian context, DGCA is one of the regulator who is working in the domain of civil aviation. Then we have got FSSAI in the food sector. We have got CDSCO in the medical and pharma sector. So these are certain regulators who regulate these sectors. So we see that while these regulators are doing their activities in terms of monitoring and evaluation of regulatory requirements, always there is a parallel system works beyond this regulatory framework. For example, this parallel system is driven through third-party independent conformity assessment framework, where there are accreditation bodies, there are certification bodies, and those certification bodies or conformity assessment bodies are supposed to certify, inspect, calibrate, or test different attributes and different specifications of system, process, products, or persons, and they then issue their conformance recommendation or conformance decision on the basis of their evaluations or assessments. And these assessments or evaluations are being endorsed in terms of various type of certificates. So these certificates, if we compare between these two systems, these certificates can be definitely become enabler to regulators to reduce their oversights and reduce their overburdens. So in Indian context, we can say that Quality Council of India has launched few schemes in the past where this conformity assessment system is supporting regulators to reduce their resources, to reduce their oversights, and to reduce their burdens. At the same time, this conformity assessment system solutions are providing Indian manufacturers and Indian uh, service sectors to increase their capabilities, their competencies, their conformance up to a certain level where they can compete with the international players. So this is the ultimate objective of this entire exercise. Are you able to see my slides? These are moving.
Yes.
Okay. So whenever we are developing any conformity assessment solution or framework in terms of voluntary certification schemes, as I told, we receive requests from different stakeholders, whether it's a regulator or industry, and on the basis of those specific needs, we try to provide them the specific solutions. And we keep in mind that objectivity, knowledge and validation, accuracy, and greater business impact should be the core principle while we are developing any scheme. And once those schemes are being developed, so we have to see that those schemes are providing benefits in terms of validating their claims for compliance, conformity to stated standards or requirements. Then definitely there should be an enhancement in the trust of consumers or end users. So these are certain end objectives which are supposed to be met while development of these schemes. And in development phase, we normally define the governing structure of the scheme, then compliance criteria. Compliance criteria is nothing but technical criteria or certification criteria, and certification process, which talks about how those certification operations need to be conducted in terms of starting from the application to the issuance of the certificate. Then different set of requirements for certification bodies, how a certification body should function in terms of impartiality, in terms of their organization structure, in terms of competent resources. So all those requirements are being addressed. And last but not least, we also prepare a document called Rules for Use of Certification Mark, because this mark gives a credibility and endorsement to the certified entity, and it is based on the market demand. So once this logo is being endorsed by the different stakeholders, so definitely there is a credibility in the market. So whenever we are doing this development work, basically we can see that we are framing three committees. One is steering committee, second is technical committee, and third is certification committee. These committees are basically framed with the help of involvement of all the appropriate stakeholders. For example, these committee involves industry bodies, government representation, regulators, then certification bodies, testing labs, training organizations, and customer forums. So all those relevant stakeholders are being kept in those committees at appropriate committees. For example, certain ministries and decision-making regulators are being kept in steering committee. Then technical committee, there are certain stakeholders, for example, industry and standard making bodies. And in certification committee, normally stakeholders are being kept who has got expertise in the domain of conformity assessment services. So these three committees are being framed, and each and every committee has different set of responsibilities. Steering committee is responsible for overall monitoring and supervision of the scheme. Technical committee is responsible to prepare and draft and to finalize and approve the technical requirements pertaining to scheme. certification committee is responsible to create or frame all the conformity assessment documents. So these committees are being first framed, and the regular meetings are being conducted. We take the inputs from all the stakeholders through these regular committee meetings. And once those committee meetings are conducted, a different set of documents are being prepared and developed. And once certification committee prepared conformity assessment documents and technical committee prepares technical documents, all those set of documents are routed through steering committee for final approval, and then scheme is launched in the market. Before launching the scheme, we also take public consultation through publication of those scheme documents on our website, so that each and every stakeholder is being consulted, and balanced representation of all the stakeholders can be ensured. So in this context of Icmed, here we can see that through the route which I have discussed right now, we framed a steering committee, then certification committee, technical committee, all the relevant stakeholders were involved. And in 2016, we came up with a Indian certification scheme for medical devices. This scheme was launched in 2016. And the ultimate aim or objective of this scheme is to have certain some type of endorsement, as Jory sir has told, that there should be some type of endorsement from CDSCO, and this either logo or this statement of conformity or certificates need to be endorsed by CDSCO. So here we can see that in 2016, when the scheme was launched, there were two levels. One was Icmed 9000, which was based on ISO 9001 requirements plus additional requirements. The second level was Icmed 13485, which was based on ISO 13485 plus additional requirements. And in recent, into 2021, June 2021, we have launched Icmed 13485 plus scheme, which is basically a product certification scheme, and which includes management system requirements plus specific requirements pertaining to product certification. And as Jory sir has told, that certain requirements, for example, which are applicable in European market or US market, can be certified, those product certification can be made under certification as per those requirements. So if we talk about which type of CB can offer those certification, so here we can see that any certification body who has got NABCB accreditation under ISO 17021-1 for a defined scope, and they can offer, they can apply to NABCB for extension of scope for Icmed 9000. At the same time, any certification body who has got Icmed 13485, they want to go apply for Icmed 13485, then they should have ISO 13485 under their scope, and then they can apply as an additional scope for Icmed 13485. If we talk about Icmed 13485 plus, then it's a product certification scheme. So in addition to ISO 17021-1, the certification body should meet the requirements of ISO IC 17065, which is a standard for product certification. So normally in all these three levels, what certification body is supposed to do, they are supposed to conduct a stage 1 audit, where they are supposed to verify the adequacy of systems and processes in terms of review of documents. And they are also supposed to see the preparedness level of the client, whether they are ready for stage 2 or not. In stage 2, certification body is supposed to see the entire certification criteria, and they have to verify and assess the compliance to certification criteria by different objective evidences. And at the same time, they are supposed to validate the competence of people who are involved in those activities. As far as audit time is concerned, here we can see that this is a indicative detail that as for Icmed 9000, additional 1 man day is required for transition. For Icmed 13485, if client is already certified for ISO 13485, additional 1 man day is required for transition. And for Icmed 13485 plus, since this is an inclusion of Icmed 13485 plus product certification requirement, So mandates are being defined on the basis of classification of medical devices. So once that entire audit or assessment process is being completed, a conformity assessment endorsement certification document is being issued, which includes certificate number, certification scheme name, reference to certification criteria, name of manufacturers with their locations, scope of certification, if scheme logo, which we will see in the next slide. Then certification bodies also can put their logo on the certificate, accreditation symbol. For example, if certification body is accredited by NABCB, so they can print the accreditation mark on their certificate. And each and every certificate need to be issued with a certain date of certification and expiry date. If we see different type of certificates, so for example, if there is single manufacturing facility, a single certificate can be issued. If there are multi-site operations, still a possibility that a single certificate can be issued if there is a common management system, and that annexure may carry those other details for different sites. And if there is a multinational company or some corporate business house is there, and they are running a big company, they have got multiple operations, multiple sites, multiple scopes. So still there is a possibility that whatever the scope is being covered under certificate, and whatever the sites are being covered under the audit process, a single certificate can be issued. Specific to this criteria for product certification, since the scheme has been launched in June 2021, so there are certain specific attributes which are part of this product certification criteria, whether it's classification of medical devices, applicable standards, device description and product specifications, including variants and accessories, biological safety, verification and validation of medical devices, software verification and validation, shelf life of medical devices, clinical evaluation of medical devices, and certain additional requirement pertaining to labeling and post-marketing surveillance. So here we can see that in the manufacturing facilities, certain specific requirements are being mentioned in this Icmed scheme. There should be one position at supervisory level, and educational qualifications are being defined. Experience requirements are also being defined within the scheme. So this is a indicative document where we have tried to see that if any manufacturers who is certified for ISO 9000 or ICMED 9000, or it may be certified for ISO 13485, so how they can process for ICMED 13485 plus certification. So in any case, they have to show the compliance in respect to not only for product specification, product certification criteria, but certain attributes of management system requirements, they have to show the compliance. So that's why one thing I would like to clarify that ICMED 13485 plus is a combination of management system requirements plus product certification requirements. And if a client is already certified for ISO 13485 or ICMED 13485, it means it will be easier for them to get this product certification, because in that case, CB's efforts will be less. Here we can see that different type of scheme marks, for example, ICMED 9000, ICMED 13485, and this green is applicable for ICMED 13485 plus. Till date, we have got 6 accredited certification bodies under the ICMED scheme. Total client certified 26, and we have one applicant CB. But at the same time, we have seen that in recent past, lot of developments are in the sector, and in the JM portal also, we are in talks with the JM portal. So we see that a very good future for ICMED scheme. And as Jory sir has told, that this is the right time that we can have more efforts in the direction, so that not only we can increase the numbers of certified clients, but we can involve the regulators to endorse those capabilities which are being generated through these certified clients. So beside this Icmed scheme, we are also operating certain other initiatives. For example, we are working with the DGCA for DON certification. We are working with the DPIT for GI indicators. We are working with Ministry of Ayush for Ayush certification scheme. We are also operating one scheme for private security agencies. So these are certain different initiatives which our division is operating. So thank you very much, and I will be happy to take any question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharma, for a very, very elaborate explanation and the process for ICMD. And you spoke about driving voluntary certifications within the compliance ecosystem in India, the structure of the scheme and benefits for third-party assessments, rule for certifications, the governing structures, the ICMED 13485 plus scheme, amongst so many other things. And I'm confident that this would have brought in a lot of clarity amongst the audience here, where they struggle for obtaining certification. And especially considering that ICMED will be one thing which is going ahead in the years to come, the relevance of ICMED will continue to be there. And that makes something that what you have brought out, the people will be able to appreciate that much better. Thank you, Mr. Sharma, for your inputs. And now we come on to the industry perspective. It's always finally it is the industry who is going to do the work, and they need to also have a say in whatever aspects which are applicable out here today. So we have Mr. Umesh Sharma. He's the head quality assurance and regulatory in Merrill Group of companies. He has again, I'm really, Rimneet, I must say, you have got an expert set of people. He also has more than 20 years of experience. So we have a gold standard as far as experience is concerned. He has that experience in regulatory and quality assurance from medical device industry. And he has implemented quality management systems as per the Indian MDR 2017, ISO 13485, CFR 820, as well as regulatory systems for various countries. So he is going to speak, as I said, on industry perspective on the implementation of ISO 13485. Yeah, so over to you, and Mr. Umesh Sharma. We are looking to hear from you.
Thank you, Colonel, for the introduction. Thank you, PHDCI, for inviting me to share my experience on ISO 13485 implementations. So I'm going to talk more about the industrial perspectives. What are the challenges you going to implement the 13485, and what are the solutions available within your organization which can help you to drive 13485. So let me share my screen. My screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I will talk on the industry perspective, especially on the implementation part of ISO 13485. So we already have discussion on what is ISO 13485. So I am not going to more detail on the technical aspects. So you see that 13485 is the only harmonized. It may not be written as a harmonized, but it is the only document which is harmonized globally, like in US, Europe, India, everywhere. Everyone has given a different name of the ISO 13485, but it is the only the document which serves as a Bible for the medical device industry. If you go in Europe, they will mention that EN ISO 13485. If you talk about our Indian government, then they have given the adopted 13485 as it is, and they have incorporated into the MDR 2017 and in Annexure 5. Similarly, in 21 CFR 20, they are also adopting, they are saying that maybe in the next 1 year, you will see the 13485 will be replaced the US 820 part also from the QMS system. So in fact, this 13485 is become the harmonized everywhere, and it is the only document which will be drive the medical device industry as far regulatory requirements and on the quality management system. So you can see the evolutions of this certificate has also came from the ISO 9001. Initially, the 9001 was more focused on the customer satisfactions and continuous improvement. However, the difference with 9000 and 13480 main is prime focus. Here, prime focus is fulfillment of regulatory requirement and maintenance of effectiveness. So 9001 is a very generic kind of certifications or requirements are more related to the customer oriented. So you can satisfy the customer by adopting these principle of 9001. But in 13485, it's quite different because you are not going to satisfy any customer. You are going to deliver something which will help to improve his life. You are going to give some therapy or medical device which will be fulfill the requirement of the patient or doctor or maybe the health workers. So there is a major difference in 9001 and the 13485. That's why the prime focus is different. So there is not the talk about the satisfaction. Here is a talk about the fulfillment and after that maintenance of effectiveness. So it is not only there to sell the product. You have to see that whether it is effective for the whole life of the patient or the all stakeholders. So this is the major difference. So I'm not going to more talk about on the implementation part because Karthi is already given detailed explanations of each clause of the 13485. So implementation is a process or a step where you have to follow for 13485, and 13485 itself is a guideline to implement the system in your organizations for any new medical device manufacturing or any for a startup. So planning, the first stage, the planning of quality management system, where you will plan what kind of scope you are going to do, what resource you require for that, and all planning part will be initially will be done. Then you have to identify the regulatory requirements. So maybe what device you are going to manufacture, what will be the regulatory applicable requirements, local, international, that you have to identify. Then you have to start your design controls. So implementing of the design control aspects of the device. Then once you have implemented all design controls, then you will start generating your documents, records, and parallelly you will impart the training to the within your organizations, or maybe required you are to distributor or your stakeholders who are going to handle this device. Then management process will come into the picture. So management process will overview the overall this planning, implementations, and documentations, training, resource parts, etc. So once you're done with all these 5 activities, then you can identify your certifications partner. So once you identified your certification partner, then as already my other colleagues has explained about the stage 1 audit, stage 2 audit. So stage 1 audit will be the only documentations review, then actual audit will be performed on your site with the actual implementations. And once you have all audit formalities completed, you will get the report from the certification body. You have to address all those non-conformities or open issues. Then certification will be issued. So your certification will be start, and then you have to sustain, and you have to follow this all surveillance audit. So it's a general step which I would like to share with you, that these will be the steps. I am skipping these slides because this already has been discussed in within the details for each clause. So I'm skipping considering the time and other factors. So I'm skipping 4 slides. So again, I'm coming to the roadmap of implementation of ISO 13485. So the first part will be the obtain management support. So in many organizations, when they start the implementations or the management involvement is very important. So involve your management, top management, and take the commitment from the management that we are going to implement this 13485. So their support is the prime things which need to be required throughout the implementation process. So first, take the support from the management. Parallelly, you can work on the establishing the projects, project planning and budget and human resource, etc., which is required for implementation of 13485. Then first thing you have to identify the customer and other requirements. Here customer is all your stakeholders, maybe the not at the end user. You have to consider hospitals, you have to consider your distributors, you have to consider your health workers. So these all requirements, plus you have to consider the all regulatory requirements from the local authority to the international level. What kind of regulatory requirements you are going to consider during this your implementations of 13485. So then you define your scope, management commitment, responsibility. So next, again, it will come the management commitment here and responsibility. So you will let down your quality policy, quality objectives, and you will prepare your apex document, the quality manual, which will be the key document which will be seen by the customers, by any certification authority, regular authority, and this will show that this document is the apex, and which will be describe your quality management system at glance, so one can understand how you have implemented, what processes you have considered. So this is very important documentations. Then parallelly, you will implement all supporting procedures, like all high level procedures like CAPA procedures, document control, your internal audit processes, corrective preventive actions, and other any post market vigilance procedures you needed that need to be defined and documented. Once you implemented all these document part, then risk is the key factor things in the ISO 13485. So develop the risk management process. Now, in previous versions, risk was considered as a only clause 7. Now it is considered from the throughout the system. Like from clause 4, you have when you start from clause 4, you have to identify risk associated within your process, and you have to implement it, this risk and mitigation plan throughout your processes. And parallelly, you have to record all these risk management activities. So once you implemented all these things, performs training, generate your training records, then your operation will come into pictures, like your all routine activities like production, purchase, supply chain, everything will be the part of your quality management system. So your operations like medical device management system will start work, and your records will be generated every step, every process. There will be some records that need to be maintained and that need to be retained for as per your defined system or the regulatory requirements. So once this phase is completed, now internal audit will be come into the picture. So you have to conduct some internal audits to check the health of your system. In this case, because you are at the initial stage, so you have to conduct 2-3 initial internal audits, whether to check that whether all documentation requirements, regulatory requirements are fulfilled and they are completely propagated at each level, from shop floor to top management level. So then some corrective actions also be required that you have to take. Then you can conduct management review meetings where you can explain the management and can review the overall implementation activities, and you can discuss the all results of your implementation.
Yeah, Mr. Sharma, I will
Yeah.
request you to
Yeah.
wind up because
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So once your management review system is completed, now you can choose the certification partner. Once you choose your certification partner, then they will come for the documentation review. Then stage 1 audit will become completed. Any corrective action required, you have to take corrective actions. Once you complete your corrective actions, then stage 2 audit will be performed, where all implementation will be verified by the auditors in actuals. Here, mandates will be more than 2 days, or depend upon your organization size or processes. So then again, any non-conformities, corrective actions required, you have to take corrective actions, and your certificate will be issued. So now I will talk about the actual challenges.
I'll request you to wind up because the next speaker.
So
has
I'm only 2 slides are there, so I'm finishing this. So the first one, the resistance, internal culture will be the most important thing when you are implementing, because change is not, people are not always happy with the change. So another point is the lack of adequate or qualified resources. So if you do not have qualified resource to implement this, then this will be challenge. If you have not planned well, then this will be the another challenge. Leadership commitment, we already talked that the management involvement is very much important for implementations. So there is a many theories of too much documentations is always floated in the industry. So it is not like that too much documentation will be there. But yeah, the documentation is the key for ISO 13485. So that will be always there. But it is not like too much documentation will be there. Many times people do not consider risk-based approach. So that will lead to improper implementations. So we already discussed on the QARA. It is considered as a QARA responsibility only. So once you consider everyone's responsibility when implementing the ISO 13485, and selecting appropriate certification partner is the key. As we already discussed with other panelists about the unauthorized certifications. So there are many JOLA type doctors available in our industry also. So one must be aware on this. So lack of auditing also will be the challenge. If you are doing lack of internal audits, if you are neglecting CAPAs, so you are not doing timely management reviews, so that may lead to a failure of your quality management systems. So if you are not considering all customer feedback during your management review or during implementing the 13485, that also may be a challenging for you. So cost is also another factor where certifications and surveillance cost will always be there. So choose wisely the certifying body based on your which market you are want to capture. Another part is the supplier is the key for the 13485. Now the focus of 13485 is not only the your organization's suppliers ability to meet customer requirement is also the key aspects now for 13485 2016. So consider their quality management system also during selecting suppliers, or in case supplier is not able to do that, then support them and make them available as per 13485. So other regulatory compliance you have to consider for various other countries if you are want to supply these your devices. We already talked about the harmonization of 13485. So MDR 2017, CFR 21 CFR. These all are adopting slowly the 13485. So later on 13485 only will be the key document for your quality management system. Other challenges regarding alignment of
I will
regulatory.
have to request you to.
Yeah. So validations, software we already talked on. So just last slides, I will complete now. So to make it successful implementations, so create a culture within your organizations, define responsibilities, create cross-functional teams, make lean processes, adopt a least burdensome approach. Do not rely only on consultant, because many times consultant will give you their ready-made procedures, documents, which are may not be useful for your processes, because you know your processes better. So do not cry for documentation. See things beyond compliance, because once you will see the things as a beyond compliance, then you will realize that how important and how helping your system to make your product safe and effective. Try to adopt a program like MD Saves, which will serve you many countries. So that is an integrated quality management system program. Similarly, initially to start, when you starting your implementations, consider risk-based approach. So, and lastly, the system is mandatory, but certification is voluntary. So look beyond compliance, not only for the sake of compliance. It will, because you are manufacturing medical devices, so that will always require a safe and effectiveness in your mind, not only the compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma, for bringing out very clearly what are the challenges that the industry faces. And you have done it in a very comprehensive manner, I must say. The next person to be speaking is Mr. Mayank Saini. He's the manager HME, Regulations Affairs, Samsung India Electronics Private Limited. And he also will list out a few challenges that the industry is facing. So Mr. Mayank is an expert in domestic regulations in pharmaceutical, medical devices, medical equipment, and IVD. And along with this, he has the exposure of pharmaceuticals of EU, TGA, HSA, and MHRA guidelines. So over to you, Mr. Mayank.
So thank you very much. So first of all, good afternoon, esteemed speakers, delegates, and all the members, present in this PC. I would like to thank, PhDCC for giving me the opportunity to speak and touch upon the challenges faced by industry in implementation of the QMS certification. As previously speakers have already touched upon the core QMS certification in terms of its requirement, structure, technicality, and authentication. And Mr. Umesh Sharma has also, briefly, mentioned and talk about the challenges faced by the manufacturer in terms of implementation of the QMS. So, at the limitation of the time, I'll try to be very specific and touch upon only the key points, which I believe that manufacturer, facing the real challenges in terms of the implementation. So I'll try to figure out the challenges into three broad categories. One is like a general challenges faced by building quality management system. And second one is the specific challenges in terms of the quality management system. And third one is the regulatory challenges in terms of implementation. So these are all the challenges are involved in any stage of the medical device life cycle and implementation of the QMS certification. So first I'll talk about the general challenges. So here are, I feel that two challenges in implementation, no matter which quality management system manufacturer wish to conform to. So one is a leadership. That is the most important factor, because management need to have a clear understanding of the requirements and set the tone for how the rest of organization approach changes. Leaders need to understand that the QMS is not a side project or the kind of a requirement which they need to just fulfill to meet the regulatory or the QMS requirement, but it affects the quality and process and will help the manufacturer in terms of long run. So therefore, a leader and the management need to understand the requirement very clearly and set that tone and drop down that message to down the line, and the management to adopt and adhere to the QMS processes. Second one, is the which Mr. Umesh has also touched upon, that there's a perception that if we follow the QMS and the other certification, it will force us to perform or do the lots of theory work, documentation, lots of procedure need to be followed. So, but that's actually not true. If we are aligned with the process, and if we record each and everything in terms of the documentation, it helps the process, it streamline the process, and it will reduce the error of the last minute error, or in terms of the quality error, the process error, whenever any quality issue has happened. So these two things I classified into the generic or the general challenges faced by the manufacturer in terms of the implementation of the QMS. Now, the second one is the specific challenges in terms of the QMS, and Mr. Karthi has explained this point well, and he has detailed layout about the risk-based decision making, and that's, I feel that this is one of the biggest challenges of ISO 13485 implementation. Why? Because implementation of ISO 13485 is required to standardize the process in order to meet the safety of the product and services realization, as Mr. Karthi has explained. And these standards are exist in medical device industry since long, which force the company to devote a lot of cost, time, and resources for evaluating their product, process, and supply chain. And that's the reason why they feel that because there are lots of things and points need to be involved, so they always restrain from this implementation, and they always run away from such processes because this required expertise. Third and key challenges is the regulatory. No matter it's from the global regulatory agency or from the domestic or the Indian regulatory agency. But we have seen that in the recent regulation, which is designed for the medical devices, in let's say in the medical device rule 2017, there is a requirement of QMS in schedule 5. So in that, I feel that in that requirement, CDSU has not notified the enough notified body which allow the ISO or the ISO 13485 certification for the medical device manufacturer. If I go with the latest notification from the CDSU side that they have issued on the 23rd of February, there are only 10 notified body which are recognized and registered with CDSU and can issue the the ISO 13485. So considering that, if any manufacturer want to associate only with the ISO 13485 in order to compete in the global market, so there are really less notified body to get such certification in the due course of timeline. Second is the we all know that there is a mandatory regulatory enforcement of the roadmap is going on, wherein we have to register the class A and B and class C and D in the defined timeline. And even though the CDSU has allowed to the manufacturer to submit the undertaking to get the voluntary registration done, but there is a timeline, which is the 31st of May 2022. By then they have to produce the that certification to the authority to get and into the import license, the manufacturing license process. So that is the another challenge which I feel that the timeline the manufacturer is getting to implementation of the any QMS, no matter whether the ISO or Icmed. So that's all from my end at this point of time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your very focused representation, especially about the challenges that are being faced. And next, we of course have the final speaker of the day, Mr. Bansi Mahajan, who is the Managing Committee member of India Medical Device Importers and Manufacturers Association, Mumbai. And he is going to talk about the problems of non-sterile surgical instrument manufacturers. Yeah, so over to you. And Mr. Bansi being the last speaker, so all the best to you.
So, good afternoon, friends. I will take 5 to 10 minutes to discuss problems of and grievances of non-sterile surgical instruments industry. Actually, the impact of and repercussions of the new medical device regulation on this industry and some solutions. I will tell within 5 to 10 minutes. So we hereby intend to say in brief some facts about this non-sterile surgical instruments industry. There are in this industry there are thousands and thousands of instruments in their range. So this industry having a lot of disciplines comprising this general surgery instruments, then dental, then ophthalmic instruments, ENT instruments, orthopedic, obstetric and gynecology, and other surgery instruments. And this industry is mainly localized in Punjab, Maharashtra, Haryana, Delhi, Tamil Nadu, and West Bengal, Kerala, Karnataka, and some other places. And the other feature of this non-sterile industries, most of the units are micro units. So having even the turnover is less than 1 crore. So they are very small. So at first place, it should be if exempted from this medical device regulation. If it is not possible, then at least very simple and judicious type of regulation should be there with minimal control to save this already decaying and vanishing industries. So then I will say some solutions for this, to how to rectify and the impact of regulation should be minimized. So first is, as there are unlimited number of instruments, thousands and thousands of instruments, and the units holder are very small, so there should be a one classification. Instead of so many classification, it should be classified in class A. In other countries also, it is in class 1. It is almost similar to our class A. So there is another thing to simplify the things later on, to avoid the ambiguity and confusion. It is better to all the non-sterile instruments should be in class A. The second our suggestion will be for this certification or the manufacturing license from CTSCO. It is okay, but there should not be a separate any drug license or from local FDA. Of course, for this regulation, these notified bodies can have their they have the knowledge of technicality of the metal, as the instruments are not medicine. So they are metal and these people can regulate it well. And third is instead of ISO 13485, as the units are very small, it should be replaced with some simple ISO certification or self-certification, something like that. And fourth, as this non-sterile instruments units are very small, they cannot have a different this fees, the cost of the registration fees. It is because there are separate fees for the different products or the group of products or the family of products. So if there is a one this registration fee for all the non-sterile instruments in one go, then it will be very simple for them and it will be easy to accommodate them in this regulation, and a lot of unproductive paperwork will also be saved, and plus they cannot afford so much money for the registration. And fifth solution is, this is a very unique type of industry. It has manufacturing processes very several at a different places. There are just like, for example, forging is somewhere else, filing, then milling, then grinding, then finishing, then tempering. So there is this process are at a different places. So it is very difficult to determine who is the manufacturer. So it is our suggestion, any of the one process the units are doing, they should be called as manufacturer. And this will be sufficient. I think these 5 points are met, then industry can be saved, because it is already having a lot of pressure. And you see, with some simple and judicious regulation, we can save this very essential and important industry. And the concept of this Make in India can be a reality. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to survive this industry. As I have told, units are very small. They are having, you see, their turnover is very small, less than 1 crore. So how they will survive with with having lot of thousands of instruments? So it should be a very reasonable, seeing the ground reality. There should be a de novo consideration for the application of regulation in this non-sterile surgical instrument industry. So this is what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bansi Mahajan. Very rightfully and crisply brought out the challenges which are faced, and especially because there are thousands and thousands of medical instruments of this kind, and the regulations of these is something which requires a lot of deliberation and thought. So I'm sure the points that you have so succinctly brought out will reach the right ears.
Yes, yes. So this is what I want. It should reach, and they should reconsider it. The novo consideration will really help our country will prosperous in this small and very essential and very important industry.
Right.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you also PHECC and Madam Rimneet Kaur. Thank you very much. So nice.
Thank you, sir.
And,
So we'll take up the queries now. So we request participants to kindly show a raise of hand. Mr. PK Jalpuri has already, raised his hand. So I'll unmute you, sir, and you can ask your query.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, madam, giving me an opportunity to speak on this forum. You see, we are also, hello, are you able to listen me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you see, my concern is that, like Umesh Sharma ji has, thrown a lot of, that light on the 13485. But in our India, we know that, lot of agencies are, issuing these certificates without doing any auditing. There is no checks. And this certification is very important for medical device safety part of it, like it is very important for the patients, that whatever devices, doctor is going to use, it should not cause any harm to the patient. But my concern is that this 13485 is available for 15,000 rupees. And who has allowed them to issue these kind of certificates, which is, very pathetic condition in our country, Same thing is happening, there are standards which are being used internationally, agencies issuing those standards as it is, without knowing about the standards. So my concern is that please look into this. This is very important aspect. We have to work on the safety aspect of the patient. Devices are used to help the doctor to see that, patient is recovered fast. So that is what I want to add here.
Rimneet, I would like to say something. Anil Johri here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Two things I would like to say. One is the second last speaker, I think Mr. Sani.
Yeah.
I think he interpreted a certain requirement not correctly. Let's be very clear. MDR requires only an audit of medical device manufacturer, does not require certification. The notified bodies are only notified for the purpose of audit under CDSCO's MDR. As far as certification of 13485 is concerned, CDSC requires ISO 13485 certificate for the purpose of registration. And it has mentioned clearly that any NABCB accredited certification body or a certification body accredited by an IF member is acceptable. So please distinguish between these two. There are only 10 notified bodies for the purpose of audit under MDR. However, there is a much larger number of certification bodies available for ISO 13485 certificate, and you can go to them. The answer to second person, Mr. Zalpuri, also is the same, that if you go for certification, please make sure that the certificate is accredited. There is an accreditation body logo on the certificate. If it is not there, Mr. Jaina has explained to you, reject it. Also make sure that the accreditation body is a member of International Accreditation Forum. You go to the website of IAF, that is iaf.nu, and you can see the list of accreditation bodies. Only that logo should be there. If it is not there, reject the certificate. There are a lot of non-IAF certification bodies operating in the market. So all advice I can give you is, please go to the website of IAF. It's simple, iaf.nu. Look at the list of accreditation bodies. See that your certification body is accredited by one of them and not anybody else. As far as ISO 13485 certificate is concerned, you can go beyond notified bodies. But if I was the medical device manufacturer, frankly, I would look at a notified body where it will serve my dual purpose. It will give me a 13485 certificate, and it can also do my audit for MDR. So I would personally go, if you ask me as a manufacturer, I would go to a notified body, but it is not compulsory. So please don't be under that impression that only notified body can issue 13485 certificate. Now, no, sir. Any certification body accredited by NABCB body can issue ISO 13485 certificate. Thank you.
But sir, for what I understand, like I have been into this medical device industry. I am not a manufacturer, but I am a dealer, and I am in this trade for last 42 years. I have seen, 13485, if you set up, a lab for auditing and all that, just a certificate is not, enough for any manufacturer to have certificate. Somebody has to audit that, whatever he is producing is correct or not. How this 13485 is just a certificate will do everything for him. This is something which is, unbelievable. Anywhere in the world, if you say that you have got a 13485 certified, then you have to, prove that, what kind of, regulations, what kind of, certificate mechanism, and what kind of, equipment you have to, for the testing and all that. But it is nothing happening in India.
If it is ISO 13485 certified by a proper certification body, then it is under audit. It has been audited.
That is agreeable. But point is that, sir, person who is getting at 15,000 rupees certificate and he is selling, stocks bulk in India. I know, defibrillators are sold without having a, ISO 60601-2-4, which is the bare minimum safety mechanism, certificate. And, they don't do any testing. They say that, they are producing in India.
The 134, please look at the 13485 certificate. It may be what Mr. Jaina has described in his presentation, an unauthentic certificate. Show me the certificate. I'll tell you whether it's good or not.
So will we move to the next query now from Shama Shaheen. So you can unmute and ask your query. Shama Shaheen, can you hear us? And we also have query from Dr. Vijay Mehta. So you can unmute Dr. Vijay Mehta.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Can I talk now?
Yes.
Basically, we are an electronic manufacturing company last 26 years. We have now taken certification in ISO 13485, a genuine one. And actually, I wanted to know the procedure after getting this certificate to get our manufacturing setup, manufacturing license. Actually, there is so much of different views coming from different people. There is a lot of confusion. So I request someone to please guide me how this test license or a permanent manufacturing license can be obtained. Hello.
Sir,
Frankly, this is a question for the previous session. With an ISO 13485 certificate, you should be able to go to CDSCO website and register yourself, number one. And then you will get some time, depending on the class of device that you are in, to get a license later on. The first thing is registration. So if you have an ISO 13485 certificate, my suggestion would be to go for registration with CDSCO on CDSCO website. I think there's some portal where you can register. So first step, please register yourself. Licensing, there is still time. You might have some still time depending on the class of device you are in. If it is class A and B, you have time till 30th September. If it is class C and D, you have time till 30th September 2023.
we have another query from Nupur Pandey. So you can unmute, sir. Nupur Pandey.
Yes, can I speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, my query is we are into medical equipment manufacturing, and we are a 35 years old company by the name of Machine Fabric Industries Private Limited. My query is we have to go for CE certification, but before that, is it required to go for EN ISO 13485, or we can go only for ISO 13485 certification?
If you are a medical device manufacturer, you have to register with CDSCO now with an ISO 13485 certificate. That's the first requirement.
Okay, sir.
After having registered, you have to check which class of device you are making, and depending on that, you have to get a license before 30th September 2022 for class A and B device, and before 30th September 2023 for class C and D device.
Okay, thank you so much.
We have another query from Ms. Harsharan Kaur. You can unmute, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, my query is that we have registered for CDSO, so we get the queries. So, is there any timeline that we have to submit the queries in that timeline, and what is the deadline for the picking up of the file? Because one file is not still been reviewed.
I think it would be hard to answer for any of us. We don't belong to CDSCO. All I can say, if CDSCO raised a query, you have to respond to the query. And the timelines are clear that you have a timeline till now I am told 30th June, by which time you must register. So you must resolve the queries by that time. Otherwise, if you are not registered, you will be illegal.
Okay, fine, sir.
So any other query, participants, they can show, we can unmute and you can ask your query. Over to you, Colonel Rajiv.
Okay, I think I must say that we have spent these 2 hours in a very effective manner, and the very
it's
fact
going to
that
be 3 hours now at 5:30.
And I must say that by the very fact that there have been only a few questions, I think our panelists have really done their job. And in such a complex topic, if you have brought in clarity, there can be nothing better than that. So this was the second in the series. And I do hope that in medical devices, often the regulatory aspect is much more difficult than the production aspect. It is very easy to produce, but then very, very, very difficult to ensure that it is meeting the regulations, and rightly so, because after all, it is the health which matters. And if health is gone, or suppose somebody is affected, then it is very difficult to recover the things. So that way, I do thank this are a lot of panelists, starting, of course, with Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, who set the tone with a very precise and a very focused talk. And then Mr. Anil Johari, you are a repository of information, sir. And you spoke on the role of voluntary certifications in medical devices. Thank you for the clarity. Mr. Kharti, you spoke about the medical device standard certification and implementation, and really the way you showed the things the photographs of various types of certifications. That would have, a picture is worth a thousand words, and I'm confident that would have brought in a lot of clarity. And then we had Mr. Mrityunjay Jaina speaking about the risk of unauthenticated certification in manufacturing. Again, it was a very good talk, bringing out all the relevant aspects that may be there. And then we had Mr. Sharma speaking about the Indian Certification for Medical Device, ICMED scheme, which is possibly going to be, as we go ahead, something which will continue to stay, irrespective of how the regulatory framework changes. Then we had some very focused industry perspective, firstly by Mr. Umesh Sharma of Merrill Life Sciences. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayank Seni, again from Samsung India. He brought out very definitive points. And lastly, Mr. Bansi Mahajan, who brought about the problems faced by surgical instruments and other such aspects. So we thank each and every one of you for the inputs that you have brought and the value that you have added to the program today. We also wish to thank Mrs. Madhu Pillai and Rimni and the PhD chamber for once again very timely bringing out the important aspect of regulations in the medical devices, because going ahead, as we are aware that the world is becoming even more uncertain and risk-prone, and medical devices are something which are definitely in for being a sunshine sector. There is no doubt about it. So overall, thanks everyone and the audience for being here. I see that quite a few have continued to be out here, and the limit was 100, and I was seeing that even after 100, there were a large number of people wishing to come and attend. Obviously, because it is a topical subject and everyone is facing problems in these aspects. And as they say provincially, that most of the times the elephant goes through, but the tail gets stuck. And it is the tail which really troubles, and you have to overcome that. And I do hope that today, with all these eminent speakers, the elephant understood that how to recover the tail from the regulatory framework of the country. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day ahead. Over to you, Rimni, if there is anything.
Thank you all for your presence and sharing your valuable insights. And our special thanks to our sponsors, Alengers, Merrill Life Sciences, Clarity Medical, VNG Private Limited. Over to Mr. Surat.
And lastly, thank you, Colonel Bhargav, for moderating the session so beautifully. And we hope in the near future we'll have more interactive sessions relating to this topic. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just to inform you all, we'll be having third in the series session in the first fortnight of April, and we'll share with you the date very soon. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.